Thank you very much
Yeah,
indeed for
lovely to
coming in
meet
today.
you.
So you've been in the army for 13 years, blown up 4 times, lost a sight in your left eye.
Yeah.
So here was another challenge. If that wasn't challenge enough, I'm going to scale the biggest peak in the world. Why did you want to do it?
I think it's something that, you know, it's probably every schoolboy's dream to try and attempt something like that. But I talked about it when I was back in the army. Early days, we were up in the Andes Mountains climbing with a mate of mine, and we just actually talked about it, and we just thought it was one of those things that never happened. I thought it'd never be good
Well,
enough.
it was one of those things. I mean, the climb had gone really well. Everything was fine until that last step, wasn't it?
Yeah, everything was going really well. Don't get me wrong, I had some hardships. There were days where I thought I weren't going to make it. I was very exhausted or tired. I weren't acclimatising as fast as other people, but I just kept digging in and kept going.
So you were very, very close to the top. This is May the 20th. And what happened on that day? Because you were getting towards a sort of ledge where you were going to pick up the next load of oxygen, and you heard these screams.
Yeah, as we're coming up from the South Col, which is like the last camp, it's Camp 4, so that's the staging post to go for the summit. And essentially, you've only got like 800 metres to go. However, in comparison, it's still a fair distance. You know, as a round trip, it's 18 hours. So we set off. I was at the back. I trailed behind. Still feeling good, beautiful night. Thought it's all going really well. And we're pushing up to a place nicknamed the Balcony, and we were carrying our own oxygen at the time, but other people store oxygen there, so they'll go up, swap an oxygen bottle out, and then they can carry on. Then when they come back down, they swap another one out and go back
Very
down.
similar. I mean, you don't get, obviously, anything like the taste of it by watching a movie, but some of those facts actually are quite clear in the Everest movie.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Next thing we know, Sunita, but I didn't know that it was her then, come sliding down, and she was clipped into a fixed safety line. The icefall doctors go up, they put all the safety lines in, and you can clip into it, and, you know, that stops you from slipping down the mountain, essentially. But she comes sliding down towards me, and I had to think as fast as I could hear her screaming, and she came down, so I essentially rugby tackled her to bring her to a halt, and then I checked her over, and the first thing I went for was an oxygen bottle, because obviously that's the main thing at that sort of altitude. And I checked it, and she had no oxygen.
Well, it turns out, much later, you find out that their oxygen bottles have been stolen, which sort of was the catalyst for the disaster.
But when their Sherpas come to collect her from my tent, they said, we've had oxygen bottles stolen. So.
My goodness me. And so you then have you chat with her and you give her some of your oxygen, and she sort of gets herself into a place where she thinks she'll be able to get back down on her own, and you watch her, and 20 metres later she's passed out, and you know then that you have a big decision to make, and it's whether you reach a goal, this dream that you've had to get to the summit, or whether you help out a fellow person in need, and that's the decision you took.
It's essentially, I still wanted to summit. I've spent a lot of time, money and effort and all that sort of stuff. You know, we've not got a lot of money, and we actually paid for it on credit cards and all that sort of stuff to pay off at a later date. So, you know, and it's a goal and a dream of mine, but I tried to revive her as best I could, give her some first aid, sort her clothing out, put her gloves back on because her gloves had come off. And then I put her into an abseil device so she could abseil down after giving her some oxygen. She looked well enough to keep going. But then 20, 30 metres down, she just collapsed straight into the side of the mountain, and that's when I knew.
And there was no question in your mind. Could you see the summit from where you were?
No. So as you go up to the balcony, it's a blind summit, so you can't see over to.
So as you turn away, and you know you've made the decision now, you turn away, your heart must have been thinking, oh my God, I've come all this way.
It was, but there's just something that clicked inside me. Thought, right, that's it now. You've got to let that go. We can think about that later.
And the descent was incredibly difficult with someone who is essentially in deep medical trouble, and probably a dead weight as well.
Well, the thing is, just about all of Everest and the route up is all covered in blue ice, which is very hard to navigate and climb up on. You've got to have crampons and all that sort of stuff. Carried her across it. We then lost the other safety line. So we're stuck in the middle of nowhere because the snow came down. It was essentially a whiteout. We couldn't see a thing. And I was trying to look across to another mountain to try and get a bearing so I could see where the camp was. I still couldn't find that. So basically, we just pointed his feet downhill and just tried to carry on.
Well, I mean, the story's complicated by another climber, Subhash, who you found up there, helped him down as well. And once you both got all, you know, sort of you and Sunita back to base camp, you had to leave him behind because you just couldn't get all of you down. It appears that he sadly lost his life. You thought he'd been seen by the doctors, but in actual fact, as you finally made that descent the next day, you think you saw his body.
I didn't know. after I handed Sunita back over to her Sherpas, because we didn't have the logistics to get her back down the mountain, and it might sound a bit harsh, but it's not our responsibility. You know, I'm a paying client.
Yeah.
My team's not big enough to help her get down, so we had to call her team up. So I handed her back over to her Sherpas, and then another team helped Subhash Paul down, and he was alive at that point, but he was in a very bad way. And the next day I went down the mountain, and we're coming over a feature called the Geneva Spur, and as I come down, I abseiled down the other side, and it's a very a dangerous ridge, like a track that you go around. And just as I looked down, I saw a body, maybe about 10, 15 feet.
The thing is that